Elon Musk is by far the highest performing human in the world. But how exactly does he do that? How exactly does he run the companies he runs? And how does he achieve the things he achieves? Because I think by every metric possible, he's the most successful person in the world. And I spent, countless hours consuming all his interviews, all his content, and reading all his autobiographies. And I've condensed it into this one video. And this is exactly what I found. Okay. And so put the video in 2x speed if you want to save time and get through it quickly. The first thing is his mental model. What is the mental model that he operates off of? Well, it's called first principles. And so Elon's first principles mindset involves breaking down complex problems into their fundamental truths, questioning assumptions, and reasoning from the ground up to find innovative solutions. It's about understanding the core essence of a situation rather than relying on conventional wisdom or strategies. And so here's a real example of a problem that Tesla was having and how Elon used first principles mental model to solve it and overcome it. So Elon used first principles thinking back when they were developing Tesla's full self-driving technology. Okay. And so basically, by reasoning that since humans drive using vision, cars should be able to also. They originally wanted to go with LiDAR, which is like a different sort of piece of technology, but they started to focus on cameras and AI to mimic human driving. And the reason for this was very simple. From first principles, Elon said, hey, if humans are able to simply use their eyes and their brains, their vision, to drive, then, technology should be also, computers should be also to do the same, should be able to do the same. And so they ditched it, and based off of Elon's, the things he said, they switched over to AI and cameras, and it's going very well. Okay, we all know how good Teslas drive right now, and, this is the reason why. And so they simplified the system, and they cut down on cost and made it scaling simpler, okay, due to first principles. And so a saying that Elon says a lot is the only laws are the laws of physics. Everything else is a recommendation. And here's a clip where he goes into that.
Important to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. So the normal way that we conduct our lives is we reason by analogy. We're doing this because it's like something else that was done, or it's like what other people are doing, and it's kind of mentally easier to reason by analogy rather than from first principles. But first principles is kind of a physics way of looking at the world. And what that really means is you kind of boil things down to the most fundamental truths and say, okay, what are we sure is true or as sure as possible is true? And then reason up from there. That takes a lot more mental energy.
And so that's that. Basically in the clip, he's saying, it is easier to reason by analogy, by, assumptions that we as humans that, or maybe our peers already have. But if we take the mental effort to boil things down into their most fundamental levels, then we're going to find the truth. There's a much higher probability that we're going to find the truth. Okay. And so the next principle that he operates off of is a maniacal sense of urgency. And so one of the first things he did when he bought Twitter was, he cut 80% of the staff, and he went into the office, and, when he went into the Twitter office, he said that it was very lovey-dovey. It was very, trying to make people comfortable. And so he cut all that BS out, and he went in there, and the first thing he said is a maniacal sense of urgency is now our operating principle. Okay. And so here's a clip where he talks about the importance of operating with extreme urgency, especially with the ambitions and goals that he has.
I think if we operate with extreme urgency, then we have a chance of making life multiplanetary. Still just a chance, not for sure. If we don't act with extreme urgency, that chance is probably zero. I think
and so that's that. Urgency is extremely important, especially when you have goals like, huge goals like trying to make life multiplanetary or whatnot. Every day matters, and, it just pushes you to make more progress. And so the next principle is, well, this is actually his algorithm, his 5-step process that he created for creating and improving things like systems, things like products. Okay. So it's a 5-step algorithm. The first step is to question every requirement, challenge all assumptions and requirements, and ensuring they're justified by a specific person, not just the department. So every requirement that if there's a requirement placed in your business or someone comes up with something, it has to have a name attached to it, okay, on who created it. And so you want to try to make all requirements less dumb, even if they come from smart people. Okay. And so the next thing is to delete any part or process, remove anything unnecessary, cutting more than feels comfortable. Okay. And so Elon says that if you don't add back at least 10% of the things that you cut out, then you didn't delete enough. Okay. Anything you cut out, you can always add back later. And so after that, the third step is simplify and optimize. Streamline what remains, but only after deletion to avoid optimizing something that shouldn't exist, a common engineering pitfall. Okay, so that's it. Simplify. Then after simplifying, you want to accelerate. You want to speed it up. Speed up the process, but only after the first 3 steps are complete. So you're not rushing in the wrong direction. You don't want to be digging your grave faster. And then after that, once you've done all 4 steps, then the last step is to automate. Automate last, ensuring the process is already efficient. Elon learned from mistakes like over automating Tesla's factory too early. You want to make sure that you actually have the right process in place, that it's actually sped up, that it's simplified before you actually go on to the last step, which is automating. Okay, and so here's a clip where Elon talks about how he's implemented this 5-step process and how he's actually came up with it.
That should simply not exist. Just make the requirements less dumb. The requirements are definitely dumb. It does not matter who gave them to you. It's particularly dangerous if a smart person gave you the requirements, because you might not question them enough. No matter who you are, everyone's wrong some of the time. Then try very hard to delete the part or process. This is actually very important. If you're not occasionally adding things back in, you are not deleting enough. The bias tends to be very strongly towards, let's add this part or process step in case we need it. But you can basically make in-case arguments for so many things. I'll leave the third step is simplify or optimize. The third step. Yep, the first step. Finally, you get to step 4, which is accelerate cycle time. If you're moving too slowly, go faster. But don't go faster until you have worked on the other 3 things first. And then the final step is automate. Now, I personally made the mistake of going backwards on all 5 steps. Multiple times. I automated, accelerated, simplified, and then deleted.
Okay, and that's the 5-step algorithm that you can implement to improve any system or product. The next thing is efficiency. Okay, and this is what he's pretty famous for right now, especially doing it in the government. He's getting a lot of hate for it. People are fucking vandalizing Teslas. It's going crazy. But efficiency is, he said, one of his main superpowers. How to cut down costs and make the entire process of either a system or creating a product more efficient. Okay, and one of the ways he tracks this is through something he invented called the idiot index. What is the idiot index? The idiot index is Elon Musk's term for ratio of a product's final cost to its raw material cost. A high ratio signals inefficiency, pushing him to simplify the design and production to minimize the gap. Okay, and here's an example of it. So, for example, take a Tesla battery pack. Suppose the raw materials, lithium, nickel, cobalt, whatever it is, costs $1,000, but the finished pack costs $10,000 to produce. That's an idiot index of 10 to 1. Musk would see this as inefficient, questioning why processing, assembly, or overhead jacks up the price so much. He'd push to streamline manufacturing or redesign the power to lower the final cost closer to $1,000, reducing the ratio. Okay, so he looks at the raw material and he looks at the finished product and he compares the 2 costs, and if it's a huge gap in between, if the finished product is much more expensive than the raw material, then that means the process of actually creating it is too expensive. Okay, and so here's a clip where he talks about how he goes about making things more efficient and just the end product being much more valuable than the inputs for those end products.
If something has to be designed and invented, and you have to figure out how to ensure that the value of the thing you create is greater than the cost of the inputs, then that's probably my core skill.
And something that Elon said is it's not the product that leads to success, it's the ability to make the product efficiently. It's about building the machine that builds the machine. And, obviously it varies from industry to industry depending on what type of business you're in. Creating a SaaS product is much different than creating, electric cars. So, this is especially true in a world where you're creating physical products and trying to manufacture them at scale. And so the next thing is cross-industry insights. And this is probably Elon's superpower, where he's in so many different industries that he can get, absorb insights from each industry and apply them to the other one. Okay, and so Elon's edge comes from blending insights across industries: auto, aerospace, energy, tech. This lets him apply one field solution to another, innovate faster, and outpace just people who think normally. Okay, and here's where he explains this really good about how he takes insights from Tesla and implements into SpaceX or vice versa.
I do find a good source of innovation is if you read about a whole bunch of fields, you can cross-fertilize ideas from one field into another. Take, say, SpaceX and Tesla. The automotive industry is very good at manufacturing. In terms of manufacturing complex machines at volume, the automotive industry is the best. Now the rocket industry, space industry, is very good at advanced materials and making things very light. So taking advanced materials and mass optimization concepts from the space industry, applying it to automotive, and taking automotive mass manufacturing techniques and applying it to space was kind of like superpower.
And so the next insight I got from studying Elon was to be scrappy. Okay, Musk's hard protocol, he basically said when he walked into Twitter, and like I said, everything, everyone was comfortable. There was no sense of urgency. One of the first things he said was, please prepare your mind for a level of intensity that is greater than most of you have ever experienced before. Revolutionizing industries is not for the faint of heart. Okay, so he does not fuck around when it comes to, his work. And so he operates with an extreme sense of urgency urgency. And even with some of his biggest companies, that means being scrappy. Okay. And it says Elon preferred a scrappy, hard-driven environment where rabid warriors felt psychological danger rather than comfort. Okay. And if you're wondering where I got these, this info from, specifically these ones right here, it's all from the autobiography where Walter Isaacson followed him around for years. Okay. And so this is what he saw Elon do firsthand and saw him say firsthand. Okay. And so one of the ways that he is scrappy is, especially with SpaceX, when it comes to launching rockets and, trying to innovate rockets, creating reusable rockets, is he has a fail-fast approach. Elon believed in a fail-fast approach to building rockets. Take risks, learn by blowing things up, revise, repeat. And he said, we don't want to design to eliminate every risk, otherwise we won't ever get there. And Elon is notorious for taking crazy risks that Peter Thiel said that Elon understands something about taking risks that nobody else understands. Okay. When he first, I think when he first sold PayPal, he had about like $60 to $100 million, and he split it. He invested all his money into SpaceX and Tesla with a huge risk of both companies dying and losing all his money. Okay. And so risk, getting information, doing things to get information, and then failing, blowing things up, and then revising and repeating is one of the fail fast ways, one of his strategies for continuously improving something over and over, to get data and to get feedback really quickly. Okay, so it's a feedback loop. You do something, you get information, use that information to improve it, and then repeat it until you get it. Okay, and so here's a clip of him talking about speed and rate of innovation and how that's important.
In terms of competitiveness, I think it most comes down to our pace of innovation. In terms of our competitiveness, I think it most comes down to our pace of innovation. Our pace of innovation is much, much faster than the big aerospace companies or the sort of country-driven systems. And this is generally true. If you look at innovation from large companies or from smaller companies are generally better at innovating than larger companies. And it has to be that way from a Darwinian standpoint, because smaller companies would just die if they didn't try innovating. Because otherwise people just keep buying the product from the big company.
Especially nowadays where everything advances and is moving so rapidly, speed has never been this important, okay? And one of the ways he incentivizes speed, or basically forces his companies to move faster, is setting crazy deadlines, okay? And in the book, specifically in his autobiography by Walter Isaacson, there's so many examples of the crazy deadlines that he set. Although, some people might see it as inhumane or like he was, being really tough on his employees, it worked, okay? It worked, and it helped his companies get out of some tough times. And so although setting unrealistic deadlines demoralize people, it allowed them to accomplish things that other companies couldn't. Okay. And it's one of the ways where, one of the things that Elon says is that as a leader, his goal is not to be loved. Okay. You have to be both loved and feared as a leader. Okay. And if you just want to be loved as a leader, then that's a huge weakness. And that's something he said himself. Okay. And so that's that. Being fast and being scrappy is one of the main things that he incentivizes within his companies that gives them a large competitive edge. The next thing is focusing on product. He said that Elon said the number of great product people is tiny. Be one of them. Be obsessed with every single aspect and small detail of your product. Literally have OCD. And so if you have a great product, the sales will follow. And that varies from industry to industry because, for example, in the online marketing space, running an agency, a coaching business, you can have a great product, but you still have to get attention somehow. Okay. And so one of the factors for both Elon and Steve Jobs' success is OCD. And this is written by a person who followed both of them around for years. And so they would obsess over a problem until they solved it. What set Elon apart from Steve Jobs was that Musk applied that obsession not just to the design of a product, but also to the underlying science, engineering, and manufacturing of the product. Okay. And so here's a clip where he talks about focusing and putting an emphasis on creating products that customers love.
So sort of general advice I'd give to people starting companies, entrepreneurs in general, is really focus on making a product that your customers love. It's so rare that you can buy a product and you love the product when you bought it. There are very few things that fit into that category. And if you can come up with something like that, your business will be successful for sure.
Now, the next thing that Elon had that allowed him to succeed was relentless focus, okay? And he has so many things, so many different companies that you might think that it's hard for him to focus, so here's how he did it, okay? And so Elon is a serial tasker with laser focus, tackling one problem at a time with intense concentration. He dives deep into details, whether it's Tesla production or SpaceX launches, and he ignores distractions until it is solved, and then he shifts to the next challenge. And this relentless sequential approach maximizes his impact across complex ventures, okay? And so here's a clip of Walter Isaacson, the person I mentioned who followed him around for years, and this is how he experienced how Elon works firsthand.
You cannot distract him. It's not like he's also thinking about, I'm dealing with Starlink, but I've got to also worry about the Tesla decision on the new $25,000 car. Now, he'll, in between these sessions, process information, then let off steam. For better or worse, he lets off steam by either playing a friend in Polytopia or fire off some tweets. It's a release for him. He's a serial tasker, which means focuses intensely on a task for an hour, almost has a palate cleanser with Polytopia, and then focuses on the next task.
And so him intensely focusing on a task at a time is, obviously a huge benefit, but it's also about what type of task is he focusing on. And the unique thing about Elon that separates him from all the other CEOs is that he understands every technical aspect and all the details within all his products and all his companies, which means he can work firsthand to deconstrain whatever problem they're having within the business, whether it's the code base at Twitter, whether it's some sort of leak at a SpaceX ship, whether it's, how to put paint, I don't know, how to put paint on the cars at Tesla. He understands every process. And here's Mark Andreessen. He's a billionaire. He works closely with Elon. And this is how he said, this is how Elon operates across his companies.
Top line thing is just this incredible devotion from the leader of the company to fully, deeply understand what the company does and to be, completely knowledgeable about every aspect of it and to be in the trenches and talking directly to the people who do the work, deeply understanding the issues and, being the lead problem solver in the organization. And basically what Elon does is he shows up every week at each of his companies. He identifies the biggest problem that the company's having that week and he fixes it, right? And then he does that every week for 52 weeks in a row. And then each of his companies has solved the 52 biggest problems that year. And, most other large companies are still having the planning meeting for the pre-planning meeting, for the board meeting, for the presentation, for the this, with the compliance review and the legal review. So he's just like, it's this level of both like incredible intellectual capability coupled with incredible force of personality, moral authority, execution capability, focus on fundamentals, that is just like really amazing to watch. And then by the way, the side effect of it is he attracts, many of the best people in the world to work with him.
And so the last thing I want to touch on is mission. Elon's mission is to accelerate human progress and ensure our survival as a species. Okay, so this is obviously a huge mission. And this fuels his relentless drive, whether it's colonizing Mars with SpaceX, fighting climate change with Tesla, or advancing AI with Neuralink or XAI. He's propelled by a belief that humanity's future hinges on bold action now. This purpose keeps him pushing through setbacks with unshakable conviction. Okay, and this comes with multiple benefits. The first one is that his mission alone creates a huge drive and huge ambition and huge purpose for him to go get up every day and execute on these goals and work towards these huge goals that he set for himself. Okay, and here's once again Walter Isaacson, who talks about his mission and his drive.
Musk is driven by mission more than any person I've ever seen. And it's not only mission, it's like cosmic missions, meaning he's got three really big missions. One is to make humans a spacefaring civilization, make us multiplanetary, or get us to Mars. Number two is to bring us into the era of sustainable energy, to bring us into the era of electric vehicles and solar roofs and battery packs. And third is to make sure that artificial intelligence is safe and is aligned with human values. And every now and then I'd talk to him and we'd be talking about Starlink satellites or whatever, or he would be pushing the people in front of him in SpaceX and saying, if you do this, we'll never get to Mars in our lifetime. And then he would give the lecture how important it was for human consciousness to get to Mars in our lifetime. And I'm thinking, okay, this is the pep talk of somebody trying to inspire a team, or maybe it's the type of pontification you do on a podcast. But on like the 20th time, I watched him. I was, okay, I believe it. He actually is driven by this.
So that's huge. Not only is having a huge mission like that a benefit to yourself, to get yourself to work and create your own ambitions and go towards them, but it's also for recruiting talent and motivating A players, motivating talent, which is probably one of the most important things in business to get right. Is how do you attract high quality people to help you come build your company and help build your mission with you? And the mission, the overall mission that you have, is probably the number one factor for attracting high quality people. Because when you get to a certain level, A players, the best of the best talent, you're not doing them a favor by you hiring them. They're doing you a favor by working for you, okay, and building your company for you, okay. And so why would they work for you when they're incentivized by all the money in the world? Well, it's by the mission, okay. And this is why Elon is able to get the best engineers, the best talent in the world to come build his companies for him, is because of the mission that all of his companies have. And here is where Hormozi talks exactly about this.
There's a reason that every single one of Elon Musk's businesses is here to save the world. That's not a mistake. Now, there's two elements to that. One is that they could save the world. The second is that that's what he makes it about. So Twitter before this wasn't about having free speech and civilization. It was just a social media platform. But now it's the last beacon of free speech. That's what Elon has positioned it as. Now, ULA, which is United Launch Alliance, which is a government contractor that does a lot of space things. You might not have heard of them. But SpaceX is how mankind is going to survive if anything happens to Earth. And so we're going to become an interplanetary species. So the likelihood that we can survive any kind of event if we're a multiplanetary species goes up for our survival as a race.
And so that's that. I mean, when you take all these principles that I mentioned today and you put them into one person who's obviously very smart, takes insane risks, very hardworking, then you're going to get someone like Elon, okay? If you go on ChatGPT or any AI and you ask it who is the most successful person in the world and you tell it to only put one name, it's going to say Elon, okay? And so, another thing that Elon used to do was he used to read one book per day as a kid, which is insane. One book per day. And so he knows about everything, okay? And so when he knows about everything and he, tries his hardest and he's driven by mission, then this is the result of what you're going to get, okay? You get Elon Musk. And so click the first link in the description if you want to book a free AI AI value call with me, a free one-on-one consultation where we go over how to sell AI infrastructures and scale an AI agency, because nowadays we're in the craziest revolution of our lifetimes, the AI revolution. Trillions of dollars will be added to the global economy, and if you want a piece of that, click the first link and book a free AI value call with me. And that's about it, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.